Football is back, which means we're setting fantasy lineups for week one. And to help us do that, I've created 7 categories to find the best plays for the week one matchups. They're boom bust, best matchup, must sit, sleeper, top rookie, week winner, and the Hail Mary play of the week. We'll identify a player for each category to help make those critical lineup decisions. Let's start with the boom bust player for week one. This is a player with huge upside, but a low floor. Think high risk, high reward, but I'm rolling the dice with the hopes that he explodes. And that is Kyle Pitts. I know, but I promise I'm not some deranged Kyle Pitts truther. I've actually never been a Kyle Pitts guy and kind of proud of that, actually. It's just this matchup and this opportunity are ripe for a boom week for Kyle Pitts. He should be the Falcons' number 2 target in the passing game after wide receiver 2 Darnell Mooney missed almost the whole summer with his injury. And this game could be our first fantasy points party of the 2025 season. We've got 2 loaded offenses and questionable defenses in the Dome in Atlanta. These 2 teams put on a show both times they played against each other in 2024. The Falcons won both, but the first game was a 36-30 overtime thriller. The other was another high-scoring 31-26 showdown. There's going to be a bunch of points scored in this game, both in reality and in fantasy. And looking back at those 2 games from a year ago, Kyle Pitts caught 7 of 8 targets for 88 yards in the first matchup, and then he went 4 of 5 for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns in the second. Those were literally his 2 highest scoring games of the season. Both were against Tampa Bay. I know it's a new season, a new quarterback, but Kyle Pitts has massive boom potential in week one. This is why you drafted him right here. This is why. Get him in your lineup. This could be his best performance of the season. Others you could consider for this category would be Marvin Harrison Jr. against the Saints or Matthew Golden against the Lions. Moving on to the best matchup, plain and simple, this guy has the nuts matchup for week one. Start him if you got him, and that's David Njoku going against the Bengals. We got the quarterback that we wanted in Cleveland, and the matchup is about as good as any for David Njoku to smash in week one. The Bengals defense projects to be a unit that we can take advantage of once again in 2025. They were particularly bad against tight ends in 2024. And David Njoku was one of the many tight ends who took advantage of that. He played against the Bengals twice last season. The first, he caught 10 of 14 targets for 76 yards and a touchdown, which was good to finish tight end 1 overall on the week. And then in week 16, David Njoku carved up the Bengals again for 8 catches, 66 yards, and a tight end 5 finish. Now, Joe Flacco will be starting at quarterback for the Browns to begin the season, which is honestly, that's best case scenario for all of us who drafted David Njoku this summer. And Flacco and David Njoku, they thrived together 2 years ago when Joe Flacco came in late and led the Browns to the playoffs in 2023. In his 6 starts, Joe Flacco averaged 41.7 pass attempts per game, while David Njoku averaged 17.5 fantasy points per game over the last 5, while scoring no worse than the tight end 4 over that stretch. Joe Flacco is going to sling it. The Bengals defense still stinks, and the Browns are going to be in comeback mode from the get-go. fire up David Njoku in week 1 with confidence. I'm starting him over TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, and others as my tight end 4 for week 1. Others that you could consider for this category are Chuba Hubbard against the Jaguars, Mike Evans against the Falcons, Tetaroa McMillan against the Jaguars, and then Kyle Pitts, who we already talked about, against the Buccaneers, and Drake London in that same game. But let's move on to the must-sit player of the week. This is the player with a terrible matchup and needs to be on your bench if you have other options. And for me, for week 1, that is going to be DeAndre Swift going against the Vikings. DeAndre Swift is a tough start in week 1. I don't know if I can do it. I drafted him in a few teams. I don't know if I can start him in week 1. We're looking at a brand new Bears offense under head coach and play caller Ben Johnson, an offense that frankly struggled for much of training camp and didn't look good in the last preseason game either. So I expect it might be a slow start for this team to begin the 2025 season. We couple that with some uncertainty about DeAndre Swift's role. Is he the bell cow? How much will Roschon Johnson play? Kyle Monangai? Who knows? I don't know. But this matchup against the Vikings, we look at this matchup. The Vikings were 6th in fewest running back rushing yards allowed in 2024, and they gave up the 8th fewest fantasy points per game to the position. In fact, the Vikings and Bears played against each other twice last season, week 12 and week 15. DeAndre Swift scored fewer than 10 fantasy points in both of those games when these two teams played against each other in 2024. Like I said, I think this Bears offense is going to naturally get off to a slow start no matter the opponent. But now they're matched up with a defense that's as tough as the Vikings. They allowed the 4th fewest points last year. I just can't trust DeAndre Swift in my lineup for this one. I would rather start Breece Hall, David Montgomery, Austin Eckler, Trevion Henderson, Omarion Hampton, Aaron Jones, Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard. The list goes on. Others you could consider for this category that you probably should be sitting in week 1 would be Tua Tagovailoa on the road against the Colts, Nick Chubb going against the Rams, and Jonnu Smith against the Jets. Now, my sleeper for week 1, this is the player flying under the radar. Not many people are starting him, but the stars are aligned for him to be a good play this week. And for me, that's going to be Jalen Coker going against the Jaguars. The Adam Thielen trade cleared the path for Jalen Coker to have a significant role in the Panthers offense right away. This is a guy who gave us some usable weeks last year. He's an undrafted free agent on a bad offense, still managed to have some quality outings for fantasy purposes as a rookie. In fact, his 43.5 receiving yards per game were 8th most by an undrafted rookie wide receiver since the year 2000. He was the wide receiver 17 in week 8, the wide receiver 12 in week 15, and the wide receiver 28 in week 18. He ran more than 88% of the routes in each of the last 5 games of the season, with at least 5 targets in 4 of those games. He averaged 1.83 yards per route on the season and accounted for 23% of the team's receiving yards, in his games played. And that's according to Graham Barfield on Twitter. And the tape backed it up. According to Matt Harmon's reception perception, Jalen Coker, he had 70.5% success rate versus man coverage, 78.4% success rate versus zone coverage. This is a good wide receiver who can play in the slot as well as out at flanker. And he gets a friendly matchup in week 1 against the Jaguars. The Jaguars were the 5th easiest matchup for wide receivers last season. And this game could turn into one of those sneaky shootouts of week 1. They both have questionable defenses with offenses that could take a leap in 2025. I believe in Bryce Young this year. I really do. And with Adam Thielen gone, a rookie manning the wide receiver 1 spot, and still some major question marks about Xavier Legette, it could be Jalen Coker who gets off to a hot start for this Panthers receiving core in week 1. Others that you could consider sleepers for week one: Jerome Ford, Josh Palmer, Christian Kirk, Cedric Tillman, Brenton Strange, Kyle Pitts, Bryce Young, and Michael Penix. And if you want more sleepers, I do a sleepers show live right here on the Yards Per Fantasy YouTube channel every Saturday night with my co-host Sam. We give you 6 sleepers who you can start, plus a bold prediction to cap off the show as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that. Moving on to the rookie play of week one. This is a rookie I expect to outperform expectations in the first week of the season. That's going to be Tetairoa McMillan. We're going right back to that Panthers wide receiving core. I told you I believe in this Panthers offense. I believe in Bryce Young. I think they're going to take a major step forward this season. And Tetairoa McMillan is going to be a big reason why. I've talked about him all offseason. He was one of my most drafted players over the summer. He's going to be the immediate alpha in the Panthers offense with little target competition and an ascending Bryce Young, who may be on the verge of that breakout season. He's got prototypical X receiver size and physicality, plus some juice to make some plays after the catch as well. He's going to be a go-to target for Bryce Young in every situation, especially in the end zone, in the red zone area, where his 6'4", 219-pound frame will be nearly impossible to contain. And again, same thing we talked about with Jalen Coker. This matchup against the Jaguars, very friendly for Tetairoa McMillan to come in and get off to a good start to his career. Like I said with McMillan, the Jaguars, 5th easiest matchup for wide receivers last season. Could be a sneaky shootout. I know it's hard to trust a rookie wide receiver in week one, but I believe we are not going to have to wait that long for Tetairoa McMillan to break out. So I'm starting him this week. I'm starting him over Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, George Pickens, Jameson Williams, and even Terry McLaurin. I am all in on Tetairoa McMillan from the get-go in 2025. Other rookies that I really like in week one: Emeka Egbuka, Omarion Hampton, and Ashton Jeanty. Start them all with confidence. Now to our week winner for week one. This is the guy who's going to absolutely smash this week and put your team on his back and lead you to a victory all by himself. And that is my guy, Chase Brown, going against the Browns. Chase Brown was my ultimate must-draft player during draft season, even as his ADP rose throughout the summer. He was a complete bell cow in the second half of last season, and there's very little reason to think that that won't be continuing in 2025. I mean, he was awesome in that role. From weeks 9 through 17, Chase Brown averaged an 86.2% snap share. He had 23.7 touches per game. He averaged 116.3 total yards per game, and he was the RB4 in fantasy points per game. He was completely dominant. He showed off his big play ability with 10 breakaway runs. He was elusive with a top 10 rank in evaded tackles, and he was an active weapon in the receiving game as well, averaging nearly 5 receptions per game over his final 8 games. Now he's teed up to be a significant part of the Bengals offense once again. He'll maintain a 70+% opportunity share and one of the NFL's best offenses. He'll be a major contributor in the passing game. He should benefit from the Bengals getting to the red zone time and time again. I mean, the Bengals are the dream environment for a fantasy running back with an all-purpose skill set like Chase Brown. They have an elite quarterback, they score a ton of points, and they have a bad defense, which only forces them to have to score more points. And no matter the situation, Chase Brown is the preferred option in that backfield. This is a guy who averaged more than 20 PPR points per game in the second half last year. He's going to pick right up where he left off against a bad Browns team. A game the Bengals should lead early, score a lot of points, and win big. That means Chase Brown, the explosive bell cow running back, has a great chance to be the highest scoring player at his position in week one and get your team off to a 1-0 start to this fantasy football season. Others you could consider week winners this week: James Conner going against the Saints. The Saints defense, the Saints team is dreadful. They're going to lean on James Conner to ground and pound and win that game. He could score a bunch of touchdowns, score a bunch of fantasy points for you in week one. And Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is set to explode this season. He's healthy right now. So while he's healthy, take advantage. I think he could go boom in week one against the Niners. Let's cap it off with the Hail Mary play for week one. This is a player who is rostered in less than 5% of Yahoo leagues, but can be started if you need a desperation play. And for me this week, that's going to be Ray McCloud of the Falcons going against the Buccaneers. We kind of already talked about this game earlier with Kyle Pitts, but with the Darnell Mooney injury, Ray McCloud is set to take on a somewhat significant role in the Falcons offense of week one. He'll work as the number 3 option for quarterback Michael Penix behind Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And Ray McCloud had his moments last year in a struggling Falcons passing attack with Kirk Cousins at quarterback. McCloud finished with a very respectable 62 catches, 686 receiving yards. He had 4 weeks where he finished as a top 35 wide receiver fantasy football. That included a 12.6 fantasy point performance against this Buccaneers team in week 5. He was targeted 9 times in that game, catching 6 for 66 yards. And now he gets the Buccaneers again to kick off the 2025 season. Plus a quarterback upgrade from Kirk Cousins to Michael Penix, who looked good in his 3 starts at the end of last season. Penix targeted Ray McCloud 7 times in week 18. For what it's worth, Penix targeted this is why I don't do these live. Penix targeted Ray McCloud 7 times in week 18 for what it's worth, leading to a 10.6 fantasy point performance. This Buccaneers-Falcons game could be our first fantasy points party of the year. You've got 2 loaded offenses, questionable defenses in this dome environment. These 2 teams averaged 61.5 combined points in their 2 matchups last season. And the Buccaneers gave up the 10th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position last year. And you know their focus is going to be on stopping Drake London and Bijan Robinson, which should open up some easy looks for the secondary options like Ray McCloud. There's going to be a bunch of points scored in this game. Like I said before, that's going to be a reality and in fantasy. So we want guys from this game in our lineup. So if you're looking for a desperation flex play in a deeper league, this is one of the games you should be looking at. My recommendation in that scenario is roll the dice with Ray McCloud and see what happens. Other Hail Mary plays you could look at for week one are Dante Thornton against the Patriots, Woody Marks against the Rams, Theo Johnson against the Commanders, and Dyami Brown against the Panthers. So that's it. Those are our 7 categories. We mentioned almost 30 players. I hope something from this video will help you get that week 1 victory. But don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll be putting out content like this all season long. And if you want more from me, you can find my rankings, articles, tools, resources, everything you need to dominate in fantasy football at yardsperfantasy.com.